I think it's about time. So why don't we convene our meeting here? So this is our 5,629th meeting. And if our friends from CAM could ring our virtual bell, that'd be great. All right, meeting is opened. So typically this is a moment where we have a thought of the day. And right now, I'm not sure whether we have one lined up, but if we do speak up, Pancho?
Timo, Francisco Nunez, we have it.
All right, go ahead.
Walter and I have taken care of it.
Say hello, wave at everybody. Not here now.
We have a list organized and we'll be publicizing it soon. This has been a momentous week in the world, with the death of a long-lived monarch who's had a very productive life, and also the remembrance of September 11th, with thousands of people killed in New York City and in rural Pennsylvania and in Washington, and many people who offer their lives trying to save people in the various locations of the bombings. Also, in a sadder note, Ramsey Lewis died this week. Great jazz artist, known to most people, a Chicago person. And my personal favorite, one of my personal favorite authors, Javier Maria's Spanish, just died several days ago. So it's been a momentous week, and let's reflect upon that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, we're trying to mix up our agenda a little bit, and at the beginning of the meeting, I'm hopeful that I have your attention. Hence, we've moved up the announcements to the front to this very moment. And the announcement for today's meeting is that we're in the process of creating a Rotary One members only Slack group. There'll be a little bit of a presentation on that topic at the end of this. If you're interested, then stay until the end and indicate your interest, and the office can coordinate all that. Then starting September 27th, for participants on Zoom, we'll be asking for a voluntary contribution to help cover the cost of the expense of setting it up via Zoom. Next Tuesday, that is a Zoom only, we'll have Mitch Daniels, the former governor of Indiana and the current president of Purdue University, speak. And as always, please check the gyrator for upcoming events, meetings, and club committee meetings. That provides a lot of good information. Now, we have a speaker today. To the extent that you have questions, you can put them in the chat box. We'll address them at the end, and we can also go through via Zoom, one question at a time. And with that, Shayla, it's your turn to make an introduction, please.
All right, thank you, Timo. I would like to introduce today's speaker, Ashlie Bryant. Ashlie is an innovator, leader, social entrepreneur, and advocate for children around the globe. 12 years ago, she founded 3Strands Global Foundation in response to a trafficking incident in her small suburb. She was integral in the development of a global anti-trafficking training and curriculum called Protect, now live in 6 states and several countries. It's a huge impact. Today, the program reached 80,000 adults and more than 725,000 youth. So again, you know, she's making a huge impact, and I'm really excited for her to be here today. Ashlie also expanded her program to now include Employ and Empower, and that really helps 450 survivors right now that are at risk individuals for trafficking. She also frequently consults with legislators and state attorneys general on human trafficking. And also she helped author and pass AB 1227 the Human Trafficking Prevention Education Act in California. It is the first legislation of its kind in US. Ashlie holds a BA in International Relations and French from University of California at Davis, and completed the Nonprofit Leaders Program in Stanford University, the Public Leadership Credential at Harvard Kennedy School, and will graduate from Cornell's Executive Masters in Public Administration in December 2022. Before I turn the call over to her, if you're looking for hands-on ways to get involved with her organization, check out her website. We'll be putting on the chat as well. There are many volunteer options in there under the What You Can Do section. So I myself signed up already, and looking forward to lead the way and support your organization, Ashlie. So with that, I can tell you that you're so passionate about what you do and making huge impact already. So thank you so much for being here today, presenting what you're passionate about. And please take it away.
Thank you, Seda, so much. And thank you all for having me. And thank you, Marga, for inviting me in to this hub meeting today. I'm really excited to be here. As I told Seda and Shelby earlier, Chicago has a special place, and we lived there for 2 years, actually, during the time when 9/11 happened. And so it is etched in our minds, our community, and how much we loved it. So it's nice to see you all. I've got quite a number of slides I'm going to go through, but I think it's important to be able to always be able to give context for, what is human trafficking? Is it a reality in the United States? Yesterday, you may have heard the ILO, the International Labor Organization, announced that there has been an increase in slavery around the globe. We are now at 50 million as a number of those who are enslaved. So it's a timely talk for all of us to have. Last week, I was actually in Washington, as I said, with legislators and folks who are working to make sure that we disrupt the economy of human trafficking. And I think it's important for us to recognize that really human trafficking is defined as forced labor and commercial sexual exploitation. But the three terms that are really important for us to actually define are these three, which is force, fraud, and coercion. So when we think about human trafficking and we think about what actually is human trafficking and how do we define it, or how do we contrast it compared to other forms of trafficking, whether it be drugs or arms, the force, fraud, and coercion pieces are really important for prosecutors and those who are also doing recovery of those who have been exploited, traumatized, and victimized. So it's important for us to be able to look at these three words and know that not all need to be present for a term to be human trafficking, but it helps us understand what might be a case of human trafficking. I think it's also really important as we talk about this that we recognize that a third of all sex trafficking cases, so again, human trafficking is both labor trafficking as well as sex trafficking, but nearly a third defendants controlled their victims without using violence. So when we think about force, fraud, and coercion, the coercion component is really one that is used a lot and is hard to be able to get people to testify against and or to be able to talk about the coercive parts. It's hard to really nail that down versus when it's violence, it's easier, that force piece. But yet we know from this research that actually they're not always controlled with that violence. So it's important for us to look deeper and understand what are these two? What is sex trafficking? What is labor trafficking? And what are some of the ways that we might see this? We might see those examples in pornography or personal sexual servitude or solicitation. We may see in labor trafficking, debt bondage or forced labor or child labor. And these are obviously globally, but also to remember that this can be done and is seen here in the United States. So let's look at that for a minute. So here in the United States, we have the Polaris Project, which is the National Trafficking Hotline is manned by the Polaris Project. And this is a heat map that shows those areas in the United States where human trafficking is occurring. Now, just because it's not in Nevada in these areas where you see the ground, the mountains in the ground, doesn't mean it's not happening there. one of the things over the last 12 years that I've been doing this work that we have known is that all 50 states have occurrences of human trafficking, and that it is a crime that hides in plain sight. And so it's really important for us to understand what I just talked about, the definition, and force, fraud, and coercion. It's also really important for us to understand how we and what we can do to be those who can report human trafficking when we see it. So I just said that yesterday we got a new number. This actually changed to 50 million. And then some of these other numbers are important for us to talk about, that there were 579 active federal human trafficking prosecutions in 2020, shows us that people don't understand what human trafficking really is, and that even when we do understand it, it's hard to prosecute. And so traffickers can get away with this crime because it is something that's hard to prosecute. That doesn't mean that we don't try our best to prosecute it. It just makes it complicated. There are victims who often don't want to testify because of fear of repercussions. There are all sorts of different things. But I think it's important, again, for us to recognize that this is happening, and we as a society, the fact that those are enslaved and in bondage, need to be able to do something to change that. So in the US, and really alongside the Palermo Protocol and the UN, we really have focused in on these 4 areas for the TIP office, the Trafficking in Persons office: prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnerships. And that is the Trafficking in Persons office, which is manned by the Department of State, is focused in on those areas, and they have a national strategy that they actually are rolling out for the whole United States. So when we look at that national strategy and we say, what are the things that we want to make sure within those 4 Ps actually happen? One of the things is prevention, which we at 3Strands, we really exist to prevent human trafficking. That's really our mission. So it's important for us to be able to raise that level of awareness in our communities and say, what is a profile of a victim of exploitation? Well, there really is no universal profile. And that's important because it helps us to be able to say, if we suspect it, we need to report it and know that there is not just one profile for a victim, but there are many different types of profiles. The other piece that I think is important to talk about are root causes. And this is a quote by our former ambassador of human trafficking, John Cotton Richmond. And he often says that poverty and education and immigration, environmental conditions, fractured families, lack of a good job, that those are all part of the causes of human trafficking. And I would agree with him. I actually agree that those are the root causes of human trafficking. And we see those in the work that we do every day, day in and day out. The other piece that former ambassador talks about is this idea of the willful decision to profit by the trafficker. And I think it's important when he has this quote for us to think about that, because as we think about the willfulness and the desire of a trafficker to actually have this business of trafficking, then we as those who are trying to disrupt the economy of human trafficking need to make sure that our 4 Ps that we're looking at factor in not only the prosecution of traffickers, but also how might we prevent traffickers from becoming traffickers. And so I think about that when I think about this quote, and specifically not just the root causes, but also the will of a trafficker. So what are the traffickers looking for? They're looking really for financial insecurity as one of the main things that they're looking for as they look for vulnerabilities, but they learn to exploit a victim's vulnerability. And it can happen anywhere in the United States. And they strategically choose the most vulnerable as their targets. And those are what traffickers who I have conversed with over the last number of years have said are low-hanging fruit, to quote them. Those who are most vulnerable are those targets. We saw that and are seeing that still in what's happening in Ukraine, as well as in other communities around the globe, that those who are vulnerable are those who are exploited first. So what makes us vulnerable? And I'll speak a little bit, we talk about globally, we, have all sorts of different examples of global vulnerability of our refugees and those who are migrating from one place to the other for shelter, for safety. But we also talk here in the United States about what makes us vulnerable here. And these are some of those things: love and acceptance, safety, money, food, water, and shelter. In our Employ Plus Empower program that we run, which is a direct services program, we serve those who are 16 to 60 years old who are survivors of human trafficking, as well as those who we're preventing from becoming trafficked in the first place, so that they have a job. But a lot of things that we see are these vulnerabilities that as they come into our program, they don't have housing, they don't have childcare, they don't have transportation. And so we want to make sure through our prevention efforts that we empower them and make sure that they are no longer vulnerable to trafficking. The other piece that we need to talk about when we think about human trafficking is the role of technology. And unfortunately, this has just exploded during COVID. The pandemic really put our youth at online and in the way of traffickers and exploiters and those who are perpetrating crimes in this way. And so I was at NCMEC last week as well, and when I was in Washington, and they are now seeing that there are 29 million images that are being shared across in the US, up from 21 million. So that really says that from 2020 to 2021, as I walked through the halls last week, that we have almost 10 million more reports that are coming into NCMEC with images of children 10 to 17 years old. 34% received unwanted material. So this is something that, again, that we need to be able to discuss and really focus in on. It falls under the crime of human trafficking, and so important for us to be able to say, what can we do on the prevention side, which is what we focus in on specifically at 3Strands. So let's talk a little bit about grooming. And this is actually really important when we talk about an individual who desires freedom, but may be vulnerable. The thought of that individual and a youth specifically might be, I want to be treated like an adult. I want my independence. I'm 14 or 15 years old. That's something that I really want. The outward expression by the individual online might be that my parents don't trust me, they treat me like a kid, I want to be an adult. And the perpetrator's response, and this is that grooming component, is I'll encourage you to take risks. You are a young adult, and really feeding into that. So there's this connection piece of when grooming happens. And grooming is very complex in its nature, but it's really about building a relationship or a bond with a vulnerable person, and with that idea of exploiting him or her later. And that process can take a short amount of time, it can take a long period of time, but grooming is a component of what we see happening to those who are victims of exploitation and of forced labor. So who are the perpetrators of this crime? It really is all ethnicities and all ages. We have seen that across the US as the FBI and our law enforcement have done a great job of every year having sweeps and stings that they do. And we see that it really can be anyone and all ages. But it's also important that we are all on the same page when we talk about what is human trafficking, and we debunk the myths that the media has spread. This is really important. 3Strands was one of 82 different nonprofits that stood in the Freedom of Truth letter that went to all the Associated Press during the pandemic that really said, let's make sure we're speaking facts instead of fiction. So fiction is that human trafficking happens only outside of the United States. We know the fact is that it happens in all 50 states. And there are cases that are reported. And if you suspect a case, that you should report that to the National Trafficking Hotline. We also know that it is fiction, that if something is a state or an area doesn't have a high reported cases, that does means that human trafficking isn't there. We actually know that doesn't mean that at all, that oftentimes human trafficking cases go unreported, that it is a crime that hides in plain sight. And so we know that as a fact. We also know that a trafficker is typically fiction is not a stranger, right? Strangers usually do not take and grab someone off the street. Usually a victim is known by his or her trafficker. And that's a really important fact for us to know. The fact that anyone can be a victim of human trafficking, this is one of those things that, fictionally, a lot of times we talk about only women and girls, but we know that the LGBTQIA community, as well as boys and men, can be victims of human trafficking as well. And so important for us to make sure that we communicate that fact. So let's talk a little bit about what are those signs of someone being exploited. Debt bondage, controlling employer, tense or fearful behavior, If we suspect human trafficking, we want to be able to report to the National Trafficking Hotline. That is something that you can do. We talk a lot at 3Strands about 3 things you can do as soon as this presentation is over. And one of them is to make sure the National Trafficking Hotline is in your phone so that you could report if you see someone being exploited or trafficked. These are more signs that you can look: a second cell phone, position of hotel room keys, multiple keys, changing friendships or relationships with peers, fearful or suspicious of law enforcement is another one. And then how do we report? So this is that thing that I said right after this, you can actually do this, which is report. So the National Trafficking Hotline is here, and you can feel free to screenshot that or take a picture if you'd like to. They also have a text line that you can text, but don't physically intervene. That's a really important component. They know, and those who are trained know what to do to make sure that the victim gets the resources that they need. And the other piece is be as detailed as possible. Give as many descriptions as possible so that they know what they're looking for when they have their boots on the ground. This is actually, you can hover your phone if you have one, and this actually will put the hotline into your contact list. And we do this QR code because we think that that's a special thing for us to be able to do. It automatically will make it so it's in your phone. But the hotline I can put into the chat too when we're finished. And then this is also another QR code that goes in depth. We actually have at 3Strands a 2-page, what do I do if I see it? And you can report. And this is a 2-pager that, again, I'm happy to give to you all after we're done today so that you can spread that through the club, but you can do that also from your phone. So let's just briefly, as I have just a few minutes left, because I know that I want to be respectful of time, go through what do we do at 3Strands and who are we and why are we in this space? So we exist to prevent human trafficking. And all of our programs focus on building resilience because when we think about prevention, and we talked about human trafficking just a minute ago, traffickers are preying on the vulnerability of those in the world. And so we want to build resilience so that our vision of a world free from human trafficking can be achieved. And we want to make sure from a mission perspective that we mobilize communities to combat trafficking through prevention, education, and reintegration programs. So when we think about what is prevention, education, and reintegration programs, at 3Strands, we talk a lot in threes. And so it's really education, it's employment, and it's engagement. And those are the 3 areas that you'll see us pushing our initiatives through in everything that we do. So we have 7 different programs at 3Strands Global Foundation. And really, when we think about prevention, it goes from awareness building all the way to tertiary prevention. So we have primary and secondary in the middle. And all of these programs are part of our pillars of prevention. So if we think about those 4 Ps in the beginning that the Trafficking in Persons Office in Washington, D.C. focuses in on, prevention is really that area where we say, how can we work with others to make sure across the United States that prevention is happening? And so this is a map for us of our different initiatives across the US and those implementations of those initiatives. So we're incredibly proud of the work that we're doing. The TATE initiative is specific to the telecommunications agent industry. It is a training for telecommunications professionals. They get RAN certified, which is to recognize and notify those law enforcement or the National Trafficking Hotline for something that they suspect. The other training that we have is called TRUE. This is for trauma response and understanding for employers. This is so that as employers, we know that happy employees are our best employees, and having an understanding of trauma is important to be able to make sure that we are meeting our employees where they're at. And so we offer these, the TRUE training to all corporations across the US to make sure that we are discussing self-care and how to create positive and supportive workplace environments so that anyone who's experienced any type of trauma will be supported emotionally and socially and professionally. Protect is our largest implementation across the US for schools. It is a training for all school staff as well as K-12 curriculum for our youth. It also has protocols, and we measured always with all of our programs, we measure prevention and our increased behavior change as well as protective factors and knowledge increase. But this is about how do we make sure that teachers know what to do if someone is being exploited. They are trained. Then we have education for our youth, and then we always are doing research along the way as well. These are the 5 different curricula, which it goes all the way from kindergarten all the way to high school. In kindergarten, we meet kids where they're at. Human trafficking, the topic, and doesn't come up until middle school, but it is important for our youth as they are growing to know who safe people, safe places, and safe choices are, as well as increasing their protective factors so they won't be vulnerable to trafficking. And then as they get into high school, how do we empower them to be those who are standing up and advocating for others, not only their peers, but globally in the world? And so we talk about building resilience and protective skills for them as well as others. We have another program called Brave, and this is really for social services and for CASA advocates, Boys and Girls Club, those who work alongside those who have been vulnerable, or those who are serving those who are vulnerable. So social workers as well as case managers. And these are different collections that we offer within that prevention training that really make sure to focus in with clients to make sure that they have a job, a sustainable job. So our social workers and case managers go through this training before they actually work with our clients in our Employ Plus Empower program, which is our next and last program. And this is our case management, our direct services program in San Francisco, San Jose, and Sacramento. This is working directly with 60 different nonprofits in each of those cities to make sure that survivors have the basic needs met, as well as employment so that they can thrive and are no longer exploited by their trafficker. And this is Kayla, who went through our program. She had been arrested for prostitution and could not find a job. But once she found our Employ Plus Empower program, was waking up early and had a routine, and she's been actually doing well and was promoted as well too. So important for us at 3Strands to have this continuum of programming that allows us to really elevate lived experience experts and survivor voice through all of our prevention programming so that we are on track as we do our work across the US and actually in Canada, which we just actually launched that initiative this last week. And lastly, it's about policy and making sure that we have strong legislation that aligns well with what we're doing along prevention. So we've authored legislation in California and championed in Utah legislation, and then are working alongside our legislators this reauthorization of the Trafficking in Persons Act so that we can continue focusing in on prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnerships in the United States. So I think that I did that in record time. And this is how you can get involved with us. You can actually sustain your impact by becoming a monthly donor. You can subscribe to our newsletter. You can think about who in your network might be able to provide sustainable employment for survivors that we serve. And you can share our different prevention programs with others, or share our 3Strands website with a friend. Our website is up here. I think it's also been put in the chat. And there are other ways to connect with us in social media as well. And that's it. So I am happy to answer any and all questions for you. And that was a quick way to be able to know what we do, as well as to be able to have that understanding of trafficking too.
Ashlie, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. What a great program and great work. I saw there were some questions in the chat. Marga was there. Yeah. I saw that. And there was Randy. Me, Marga, and Randy, you guys can speak up. I'm on my iPad and have trouble doing both things at the same time. But Marga, if you, ladies first, how's that? Marga? Otherwise, we'll go to Randy.
Yeah, okay, here I am. Yes, thank you, Timo. Thank you, Randy. Well, Ashlie, I mean, the work that you do is extraordinary, and we're very grateful that you are here with us today. I wanted to ask you, you have a general idea of what is happening with human trafficking throughout the United States. And we hear that Chicago is one of the worst cities in human trafficking. Would you have an idea of what is the incidence of this horror in this area? And as Rotarians, what can we do?
Yeah. So I think, I actually was there. I actually got to walk with Margot the last time I was in Chicago, and I was sharing with her that I was there as a listening, in a listening circle with families who were foster families, parents to those in the greater Chicago area. And there is quite a bit of human trafficking that is happening across the US, and it happens in all cities, but it does in Chicago. I think for you all as a Rotary Club, you have some amazing nonprofits on the ground that are doing great work. And you have those who are foster families that continually need the support as well. And I would actually encourage you to look at how you might support some of those foster communities and those foster families, because many of them are living with those that they love as children that have very many high needs and who have experienced trauma in many different ways. And navigating the systems of child welfare or of mental health and all these different systems is not easy. And so I think that you as a Chicago club could come alongside some of those foster families and foster agencies in a big way to be able to really support them. I know that from a residential care as well, that there are some Shelter Inc. is there that is a great nonprofit. I also think that it's important to be able to help those in power to understand that that in Chicago you have, there needs to be better bridges between child welfare and those who are trying to combat and eradicate human trafficking. And I think that's a deeper conversation that I am happy to be a part of. I know that some of the folks I've been working with in Chicago want to have deeper conversations around how we strengthen child welfare and bridges between other agencies. But I think those are just some of the ways I think, Marga, that you all could be supportive.
Thank you. I'll be happy to have a conversation.
Yeah, no, we can go deeper on that because I've got some folks in Chicago who would love to go deeper with that, especially. And then I saw that there was a question around, let's see, Ragas is another, it's like the action group. So I sit on the board of Ragas, which is Dave McCleary was the president. Now Bob Deering is the president. And so that's another a Rotary Action group that if you all as a club would like to join, and if you haven't, I would encourage you to, but that's another thing that you could do as a club as well, because that's a great action group to be a part of. And then I think, let's see, am I aware of cause-based clubs? Yes, I am. There's one in actually Cosette in Southern California that has a club. Yeah, as well as Karen in Minnesota also has a club too. So I am aware of those. I've spoken at a number of different cause-based clubs as well. And then I was just actually, and I don't know if you were at the convention, but I was on a panel there with a prevention panel with Dave McCleary and Bill Wolf and Amelia Stanzel. So we actually got a chance to talk about prevention specifically, and I shared some of the outcomes from our school-based program at the convention, which was fun to be able to do. Protect, we actually had the largest global grant that was given to Sacramento to the 5180 Club back in 2018 and had some amazing outcomes with our Protect program in Sacramento. And Protect now has been scaled across the US. We'd love to come to Illinois. That would be a great thing for us to do. So we could talk about that deeper too, but yeah, so that's just a little bit. Yes, I'm aware of the cause clubs too.
Your program should go much past club speaker. You should be featured at district conferences. You should be featured at zone institutes, so that you reach more people. You're very, very passionate, and your program is very, very well delivered. But I think it's Chicago One, and it's everybody who has ever heard of you and Rotary's responsibility to get your name and contact information out to people that can allow you a larger audience.
Thank you, Randy. I really appreciate that. I actually will be at the Zone in San Diego in October, but I would love to be at all the zones or have some of our staff, because I agree. And it was the first time that where I had the panel at the convention, but I Rotary has the ability to, as I say, disrupt the economy of human trafficking. I really, truly believe that. I look at what we have done for eradicating polio. I look at all the things that we have done as a service agency, club, nonprofit. And I think to myself, if we are focused in this space, we can have incredible influence and impact. And so I so appreciate you saying that, Randy, because I will stand and have whatever rooftop, whatever soapbox I need to continue to have this conversation, because it is incredibly important that we do as Rotarians.
Are there any other questions by the audience? This is the time to speak up, guys.
I would just say that, not a question, but Ashlie, I would just say that, I have an 11-year-old, and I know more than ever now they're exposed to social media, and it's a big worry of mine. So I think Protect being in Chicago schools, and I'm definitely going to be in touch with you about his school to see, I'll talk to the principal. Every little step, I think it matters. Sometimes we hesitate to take a step because it's such a broad thing that needs to be handled. But, one school at a time, or whatever we can do, I think is very helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you, Seda. And Protect has been scaled in different states across the United States. And we have so many amazing outcomes that are happening that we are incredibly encouraged by the prevention work that's happening. Is it Ronald? You had a question? Oh, I think you're still on mute.
Oops, I got muted. I was wondering what was the text number that was shown on the screen?
Oh, the Be Free text number. Yeah, you bet. Hang on, let me show. And also I was going to tell you, Ronald, did you say that you're in Michigan?
Yes.
So we have an implementation in Grand Rapids, actually, of the Protect program.
Okay.
So yeah, so when you said that, I thought, oh, wow, you know what? We can actually, I can tell him that. So there you go. So this is the National Trafficking Hotline, and the help is this is the text. So someone can text to that.
733.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Got the other number, but I didn't get all the text number, but 233 733.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, this is, you on our website too, you can get that. But it's important for you to have that in your phone. I would encourage you to do those 3 things, as you leave your meeting today, to put the Human Trafficking Hotline in your phone, to go up to the 3Strands website and look at our programming, and then think about what you can do to combat human trafficking and how you can be part of the solution. We
will bring this to our club tomorrow's meeting, and also we have a Zoom tonight. I'll also be mentioning this.
Great. Thank you.
Nice
and
presentation.
Ashlie and fellow Rotarians, just one quick thing. This is the type of program where both Rotary clubs and your organization can benefit by mentioning that you spoke at a Rotary club and this happened. And when say that when you go to school, say, I heard this incredible speaker at my Rotary club. This is one of those things that could morph into an incredible amount of support for you and working on preventing trafficking, and a wonderful membership program for Rotary clubs all over. And it just comes to me because I'm a past district governor, so I'm going to mute myself and shut up.
Yeah, no, I hear your passion, and I'm so glad. And that's, I think that I know Bob Deering, and that, he and I have talked often about these types of things, and him being a district governor, he always says, I get my district governor hat on and then I'm in that space. Anyway, any other questions? But I'm happy to be at any club anywhere. In fact, I yesterday was asked to go to Africa and talk they're doing a hunger conference, and how hunger often translates into people being trafficked. And that is absolutely, those root causes are part of what we know in the work we do can lead to human trafficking.
Well, Ashlie, great. Are there any other questions for her? Otherwise, Ashlie, are you in touch with the Boys and Girls Club of the Union League Club? Our Rotary Club meets at the Union League Club in Chicago. The Boys and Girls Club is one of the biggest in the country. Typically, they serve around 30,000 kids in Chicago. I think it would be a great partnership for you. Check it out. I'd be happy to make an intro for you. But I think that would be a beautiful multiplier for you.
Yeah, that would be great. Gosh, it would be wonderful to reach those kids through our Protect curriculum at that club. That would be wonderful. So I'd love that connection. Thank you, Timo. Great.
Well, thank you for joining us. Typically, when we do these meetings, we have a little thank you gift. This year, it's a little Rotary coffee mug. We'll have to find a way to get that to you. But for now, please accept the virtual thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it. Thank you. And it's great to see all of your smiling faces. And I look forward to future work together. And don't hesitate to, in fact, I'll put my email in the chat. If you think of things afterwards, I'm happy to talk about whatever it is that you might have as a question, as well as Randy, if you think of places that you want me to be on stage, I'm happy to do that too.
Great.
Thanks you. Again. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, introduction of guests. Let's start with the international guests who have joined us today. I'm aware of two of them. There should be Waldemar and there should be Hans-Joachim, if I'm well informed. I don't see everybody here, but I expect them to be here. Are you guys around?
Yeah. Hi, Timo. Hi, everybody from Rotary One, and greetings to Chicago from Hanover. Yeah, it was a great talk. Very, very impressive topic tonight. Yeah, I hope you have a good day in Chicago, and see you soon again in one of your meetings, Timo. Hello to Chicago.
Thanks for joining. And the other fellow German should be Waldemar. Yes. Hans-Joachim, by the way, I connected you guys yesterday for the ICC meeting, so check your email.
Yeah, I've seen a mail. Thank you very much.
Very good.
So,
Waldemar.
Hello, President Timo. Thank you very much for enabling me to join this meeting. The topic, coming back to the topic, is also in Germany very, very important, because we have a lot of, especially refugees from the Ukraine. And a few years ago, we had 100,000 of unattended children from Near East. So the topic is very important, even in the good old Europe. Thank you for the information, and thank you, as I said, for the invitation. It's so good to see you again, especially Marshall. And you, of course, we met yesterday. So I hope that you don't keep all the little presents and gifts I brought from Germany for the members by yourself, but share it with all your friends.
In my belly already.
I was thinking about it. Thank you very much, and have a good day. And follow up.
Thank you. Any other international Rotarians who joined us today? No? All right. How about the US Rotarians? I heard Grand Rapids was there. Then Randy was on.
I talked from Coloma, which is outside of Grand Rapids.
Welcome.
We're in by St. Joe, Benton Harbor. We service Coloma, Watervliet, and Hartford, about 5 miles from Lake Michigan.
Thank you for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoy always making up.
Thank you.
Timo, it's nice to be back with your club. I'm a past district governor from District 5300 that goes from Vegas to South Pasadena out to Edwards Air Force Base, where they land the shuttle when it's foggy in Florida. And I'm also the past chair of the Rotary Rose Parade Float Committee. And I hope you all have had a chance to go to rotaryfloat.org. This year's float that will have the first ever female president writing on it is an absolute stunning carousel stallion. So everything we do is done by donation. So I'll mute myself, and it's just nice to be back. I haven't seen you guys in a while.
Thank you for joining. Any other U.S. Rotarians who joined us today? No? Do we have guests, non-Rotarian guests who joined us? All right, doesn't sound like it. At the retreat, we talked about how to make our meetings a little bit more interesting. And one new item we'd like to introduce is the so-called member minute. So what does that mean? I think in order to enhance and encourage more fellowship at in-person meetings, we'd like to hear from you as to what's happening in your life. Do you travel to interesting places? Are there family news? Are there babies? Any business news, promotion, job changes? So going forward, think about those things, speak up. You can share them with the office as well for the inclusion of the gyrator. But I think I'll start with something, an experience today. Our treasurer, Matthias, and I went to the IMTS today. That's a big trade show at McCormick Place, and there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people. It was like better than the good old times. It looks like life is coming back. I was just so impressed by the level of activity, and you could see the joy in people's face to be back in business. It is just a fantastic development, and I wanted to share that with you. All right. Anybody else with any news he or she would like to share? Otherwise, we'll go to what's up next. I guess we've got the website that has our meetings. Here's the list of our committee meetings. Reach out to your chairs to coordinate that. You know, the club lives through activity and engagement, involvement. So please show up in person if you can. Here we've got our upcoming dates here for the meetings and the events. I've already mentioned Mitch Daniels, so register if you can. Love to see you there. And I think with that, we can move on to the four-way test. Marga, are you still on? Looking for some help?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Would you like to lead us into the four-way test, please?
I'll be delighted to. So the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Marga. Appreciate that. That concludes our meeting. We should have a little bell sound if possible, but I encourage everybody to stay on because we'll be joined by Mark Smith, who's our co-chair of the PR committee, who will introduce us to the Slack group. We're trying Slack not as in Slacker, but as in a means to communicate as a club within the membership. So let's conclude the meeting.